Hello everyone, this is Matt the Optimist. Welcome back to my channel. And this is the second part on my research on coach abuse from the not so little secret of sports. Hold on, I think I said that wrong. It says here, coach abuse, the dirty not so little secret in sports. If you haven't seen this video before, it's pretty obvious. Obviously, you haven't. I'm talking funny. Sorry. And if you've seen the first one, you'll know about the link, or you'll know about the link that I just put down, so you know where I got it from. But just in case you haven't seen it before, competitiveedge.com, and that's how they got it. Coach abuse, not dirty. The dirty not so little secret in sports, and this is the second part of where I'm going. I already finished about this part right here, right where I finished here. Now I'm on the second part. Let's meet Mark. And this is about Jenny's journey on how she was abused by his coach named Mark. This has been proven on this article that I found, and I'm going to be reading it to you guys. And the reason why I will not be looking at this camera is because I'll be looking at the screen. Now let's get started. If any of you who don't want to hear this, or if anyone finds this offensive in any way, or you don't like the way I'm talking about this, get off the video, because I'm still going to be doing this. And I'm going to be reading it right now in 3, 2, 1, now. Let's meet Mark. One such abusive coach through the eyes of Jenny, his star athlete. Sadly, the following story is true. As always, I've changed the names of those involved to protect privacy. Although my preference in this case would be to loudly out the abuser, bully, and everyone who colluded with him. Only my professionalism restrains me from acting out the anger that I feel towards these kinds of self-centered, misguided, destructive individuals. If this story sounds uncomfortably familiar to you, that's probably because it is. That's probably because it is. It represents a situation that all too frequently exists in college, high school, and junior sports today, especially from sports companies that the athletes are performing in. Jenny is currently a professional tennis player on the women's tour. She was self-referred to me for performance anxiety and an ability to close out important matches. This problem seemed to be fueled by a lack of self-confidence as well as self-directed anger whenever she made mistakes. If she didn't execute perfectly, Jenny would get very upset with herself. This was always more of a problem with the match was on the line. Her frustration was with mistakes distracted her focus and timed her up physically. This caused her to play more tentatively. Make even more unforced errors and even eventually lose to weaker players. That fact that Jenny was still playing competitive tennis was a miracle unto itself, given the emotional and physical abuse that she was continuously subjected to for her 4 years in college at the hands of Mark. The worst coach I've ever had, and a poor excuse for a human being. In fact, a number of her former teammates had either quit the team before their eligibility expired or had been given up the game entirely after their college careers had ended. Unlike Jenny, they were not able to salvage any of the love that had been originally brought to them to tennis in the first place. Sorry, my throat's a little bit soggy. Their own experiences with Coach Mark had completely extinguished the joy that the sport had once held for them. There are a number of upsetting aspects to the story, but one of the more troubling ones for me is the response of the women's athletic director to her coach's outrageous behavior and Jenny's obvious abuse. It should be noted that this is unnamed, highly visible Division I school boasts one of the top 10 tennis programs in the country. Their men's and women's athletes teams enjoy a high level of success across a wide variety of sports, not infrequently contending for natural championships in many of these sports. By all outward appearances, this is truly an elite athletic program. In fact, the school was recently voted number 1 in a national magazine poll of the best Division I schools to compete for the country because of how well they treated their athletes. Jenny relayed this is pragmatic speech issues. Sorry, I have autism, just letting you know. Jenny relayed this statistic with sarcasm and bitterness. It just goes to show you how, for a little spin and a lot of denial, will take you. This is her story. Jenny was the number one singles player on her team as a freshman and experienced a tremendous amount of early success. Because of this success, she very quickly became one of her coach's favorites. However, even as a freshman, Jenny noticed that her coach placed way too much emphasis on winning. When his players struggled, he seemed to have a short fuse and was easily prone to anger. This anger was often expressed in a demeaning, verbally abusive way. Towards the middle of her freshman year, Jenny first witnessed Mark's irrational, out-of-control behavior. He went off on me because I lost and the team needed a win. But the end of her freshman year, she noticed a feeling of desperateness and infiltrated her tennis matches. For the first time in her life, she felt like she felt like she had to win, and if she didn't, something bad might happen. Although she couldn't put words to it at the time, she had started focusing during her matches more about Mark's becoming upset if she lost rather than on her game. Over the summer between freshman and sophomore years, Mark called Jenny once a week. The content of these conversations was always negative and usually entailed Mark berating her in one way or another. For example, in one conversation, he told her, "The incoming freshmen are so good that you probably won't even make the starting lineup." Or Jenny's favorite, "You are a hard worker. You're really smart and you're really attractive, and that's really good because tennis isn't going to work for you as a career." It's pretty uncalled for, don't you think? During the fall season of her sophomore year, Jenny was sitting on the court chatting with a group of teammates waiting to play a doubles match at a team tournament in California. Jenny's doubles partner had a wrist injury and went up to Mark to see if he would replace her in the lineup. She too explained that she was in too much pain to play. However, in Mark's mind, you were never too injured to play, and athletes who complain about being in pain were weak and fakers. In fact, Mark hated injured athletes. For some reason, this incident pushed the coach over the edge, and according to Jenny, he went berserk. He directed his tirade at Jenny, screaming at her for no apparent reason. As he did so, he suddenly grabbed her by the arm and forcibly yanked her off the lounge chair that she had been reclining on. Jenny felt totally embarrassed and humiliated because Mark's outburst happened in front of a number of coaches and players. She and her partner went on to play their match, but by the night, Jenny's left arm was really bothering her. Soon she couldn't even lift it. She went to see a doctor the next day, and an MRI revealed that her labrum had been torn. Or labrum. I'm not very good with certain words, so bear with me. Shockingly, Jenny didn't tell the doctors or anyone else, including her parents, about what had really happened. She didn't even confront Mark. Truth be told, she was in a state of shock that something like this could ever happen to her. When the examining doctor had asked how the injury had happened, Jenny simply explained that she had slept on her arm funny, and that's how it had occurred. Of course, the school doctor didn't believe her, but he also didn't press Jenny for the real story. Sorry. Perhaps Jenny's reluctance to tell anyone was practically related to the brainwashing that Mark regularly engaged in with Jenny and her teammates. In fact, in order to play for the team, each athlete had assigned a poster that hung in the locker room. In big letters, that the poster read, "What you say here, what you see here, what you hear here, stays here. When you leave here, in other words, nothing should ever be brought outside the team." That's kind of stupid, if you ask me. Jenny's injury was so severe that she would need reparative surgery to correct the tear. As a result, she would have to miss her entire sophomore season. The incident was immediately brought to the attention of the women's athletic director. She knew exactly what had happened, that one of her coaches had been physically out of control and abusive, what the MRI had shown and the prognosis, that Jenny would miss almost a full season of competing. The AD's caring response, she immediately told Jenny would miss told Jenny that she didn't need to call her parents about the incident because this was something that we'll handle in our family. Keep in mind that one of the primary tasks of a competent athletic director is to look out for the physical and emotional welfare of her athletes. However, the woman's AD was only interested in what Jenny's father, who was a lawyer, was going to do and whether he might bring a lawsuit against the athletic department and school. The AD never once called Jenny to see how she was doing. Never acknowledged that Mark had dangerously crossed the line and assaulted an athlete. Never once came out to any of the tennis practices or took the time to call Jenny's parents and fill them in on the situation. When Jenny's dad came to the school and met with the AD regarding the incident, the AD looked him straight in the eyes and promised him that she would insist that Mark get regular counseling, anger management training, and be closely monitored weekly. Needless to say, Mark never once went to counseling or had his behavior monitored. What the AD consistently did was everything in her power to make sure this ugly incident disappear. After sitting in on a players-only team meeting, which occurred shortly after the abuse, in which a number of athletes voiced their concerns and upsets about Mark's actions and Jenny's injury, the AD pulled Jenny aside and told her, "Your team is whining about something that didn't even happen to them. This was become a huge distraction to the team, and I don't want you to talk about it with them anymore." How's that for a supportive response? The woman's AD never even reported the incident to the men's AD, who was in charge of the entire athletic department. She seemed to want to very quickly brush the whole ugly incident under the rug. In a later meeting with the AD, Jenny made it clear that she never wanted this kind of thing to ever happen again to another student athlete who played for Mark. While the AD reassured Jenny of this, she never met with Mark, never confronted him about what had happened, and failed to follow through in any way to ensure the future safety of her athletes. What the AD was very much interested in was maintaining the school's program's image as a wonderful place for student athletes to learn and compete. Shamefully, she colluded with this out-of-control coach, making her equally as guilty of the abuse. And the really comforting things for parents of students, athletes at this fine institution to keep in mind is that this dangerously self-centered, incompetent individual is still in charge of women's athletics. Jenny's shoulder surgery took place on the 20th of December. Her parents wanted her to redshirt her sophomore year because they didn't want a lot of pressure put on their daughter to have to rehab quickly and get back into competition. However, Mark told her father that he didn't want her to redshirt because he felt, being a highly trained expert in medical profession, that Jenny's injury wasn't that serious and that she could get back in the lineup in plenty enough time. Just 10 days after the operation, Mark was yelling at Jenny because he felt like she wasn't doing enough to get herself back. He continued to put pressure on her to get to rehab quicker and get back with the team. He pushed her hard and encouraged her to ignore the warnings from sports medicine that she play only 20 minutes a day. Soon, Mark had her hitting 2 hours a day. The team wasn't doing well, and Mark wanted her in the lineup as soon as possible. However, because she was doing too much too soon, Jenny tore muscles in the rotator cuff of her right shoulder, her rectum. This injury ensured that her sophomore season would be a total wash, which seemed to make her coach that much angrier. As we discussed, one of the common dynamics in any abusive relationship is that the victim begins to feel like she is directly responsible for the abuse. This guilt-filled illusion is encouraged by the abuser, who continuously feeds this distortion to the victim. This is now how Jenny was starting to feel. On some level, she blamed herself for Mark's angry outbursts and the incident that injured her, costing her sophomore season. If she had only played to her potential or won more, then perhaps Mark wouldn't have gotten so frustrated and angry. This incident of physical abuse furthered her fears of the man. Sorry. Okay. While there was no other occasions of physical abuse up through her junior and senior years, Jenny reported that Mark continued to be verbally and emotionally abusive towards her and her teammates. It seemed, however, that the bulk of his anger and abuse was directed at her. When she lost, he'd tell her how bad she was and that she wouldn't be playing tennis. Several times in a week and in various forms, he would repeat this message to his star player. And when she was a senior and still clearly the best player on the team, Mark punished Jenny further by pushing her down in the lineup to the 3 single spot. He continued to verbally demean her and question her commitment to the team and sport. At other times, he would try to turn Jenny's teammates against her. Throughout it all, Jenny played with the intense fear of losing. In her mind, the stakes were always very high whenever she stepped out on that court. Losing meant that Mark would be unhappy, and an unhappy coach, in her mind, that she wasn't physically safe. At the end of her senior year, Mark again lost control and physically threw another player out of his office in front of his assistant coach. This incident so shook up his assistant coach that she immediately contacted the women's AD to report the abuse. In response, the AD got mad at this coach for reporting it. After the hearing of this incident from the assistant coach, Jenny and the rest of her team confronted both men and men's. After hearing of this incident from the assistant coach, Jenny and the rest of her team confronted both the women's athletic director and head athletic director about Mark's abusive, out-of-control behavior. The head HD was shocked and appalled to hear about what happened. As a consequence of the meeting, Mark was forced to resign. However, even though he was removed from his job, he wasn't fired. He was simply given another job in another department where he worked for the next 2 years. And that's it for Jenny's story. This third part will be advice towards athletes, parents, and to other coaches about how to deal with coach abuse. Until then, if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have the same experience, share your story on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. I'm Matthew Optimus. Peace, the Frel out, and I'll show you the next part, the third part, soon. Have a nice day.